Right. Morning, everybody. Sorry about that. I was getting an echo from something. Okay. Just find a comfortable way of standing to start off with. And if you're used to doing this, then you'll have an idea of what you're aiming for. Just give yourself plenty of time to settle into it. Just in terms of your feet, hip width apart, and always a little bit forwards in your feet, just allowing your hips to settle back. And beginning to turn in this central part of your body. So the area between hips and pelvis and waist. Just gradually giving the movement a chance to build up, giving your body a chance to sort of warm up and to settle into the movements, giving your mind a chance to just quieten, to come into your body as a way of just allowing your thoughts to settle. So a kind of dual process of your body beginning to loosen up a little bit, movements, your weight beginning to drop. So your center of gravity dropping towards the ground, or you can think of your pelvis hanging from your spine. We sometimes refer to this as a process of sitting. If I exaggerate a little bit, I go from here to here as though I'm just sitting on the edge of a table or something like that. So there's various ways that we can begin to relate to this idea of what we call rooting down in Tai Chi. This is an ongoing process, and the start of it really is just to bring body and mind into that sort of area, shall we say, physically towards the ground, the center of your body dropping towards the ground, and your thoughts following that movement downwards. And this is both a starting point and also one of the qualities that we look to cultivate as an ongoing process in Tai Chi. Rooting down physically makes it creates the foundation for all of the movements. It's like the foundation of a house, or the root of a plant is the sort of base for the rest of the structure, the rest of the organism. It helps us to become more stable, and it also starts to release the upper part of your body, in particular, from the burden of carrying too much of your weight. You will find that you feel it in your legs, and those of you who are familiar with these arts, there is a familiar feeling. Oh yeah, my legs are now starting to to to, to feel this, not in a kind of negative way, but just the sense that they're actually being used. So this settling down process has been likened to leaving a jar of muddy water on a table and just letting the mud settle. Kind of process of clearing, process of space creation within the body. And as we refine our posture, and again, this is a constant process in Tai Chi, so we begin to realize that the movement, the energy flows within those spaces that get created. This is always a first stage in Tai Chi, and an important stage. It's often where many of the immediate benefits lie, the quietness, the calmness, subtle changes in posture, all contribute to our well-being. Gradually, we bring in a little bit more awareness, trying not to let our sort of general thoughts take the lead, but rather they just settle into the background as we refocus our attention and bring a degree of intentionality to them. There's an intention to maintain that focus of attention, that quality of stillness. There's an intention to allow tightness and stiffness to drain away from our body. And there's a growing intention, ongoing intention to refine movements so that all the movements have a sense of what we might call deliberation about them, without trying to control things too tightly. Cultivation is a useful word here. When you cultivate something, when you grow a plant, say you've got a rose bush in your garden, you want it to grow in a certain direction, you don't just go in with a machete and hack away at it. You stop and you look at the way it's growing. You work out which areas of the plant you want to encourage to grow, where you might want to cut away some of the dead wood, some of the branches, the twigs growing in different directions. And so over a period of time, the plant just grows in the way that you want it to. But you're allowing the natural patterns of movement for the plant to emerge, and you're allowing these patterns in your body to emerge. Gradually bringing a bit of discrimination as well. Where are the useful areas of movement? Are you tight in your back? Can you therefore reduce that tightness in your back by moving, say, more from the center of your body? And this is something that I think stays with us in our Tai Chi practice. As you become more aware, and your awareness develops degrees of subtleties, so we realize that this intentionality is a key part of what we're doing in Tai Chi, and important for both mind and body. With time, your body will set into a nice steady rhythm with this movement. As you release tightness in your body, you find that you sort of settle into a particular rhythm. There's a feeling of resonance and connection coming from your hips, radiating out, certainly to the upper part of the body, maybe even to down through your legs to your feet. That sense of connection is something that's very important in Tai Chi. We try to recognize that no part of the body is isolated, and the more our body we can bring into any one particular movement, the closer we get to this heart of Tai Chi, of movement with less strain, but still a very powerful movement, a very effective movement. And that movement is both what we might call external. We move our hips, turning our hips, our shoulders follow, our shoulders move, our arms follow. But also a sense of the movement, the patterns of movement, of expansion and contraction within our body as well. And both aspects of that can be refined through our intention. Still leaving your hips sinking back, raising your arms a little. Don't come up when you do this. It's quite common to find ourselves nicely seated down, and then suddenly everything comes up. This is just a raising of your arms, a rotation of your shoulders. So you can imagine somebody just leaning on your shoulders, pressing them down. And these images, these ideas that we use, some of them just encourage our bodies to almost to find a different way of moving. So, for instance, with this one, a very common thing that happens when we raise our arms is our shoulders come up, and often our hips come up as well. But actually, this is just a simple rotation in the shoulder and doesn't need to have this kind of lifting up through shoulders and shoulder blades and rib cage and so on. That's a very simple example of something, again, which is ongoing in Tai Chi. You can use different images to help us with this. Just letting your hands drop down. And then the 1 foot forwards, keeping the width of your step, moving your weight forwards and backwards. Letting the pace of the movement, the rhythm of the movement now come from the ground through your feet and your legs. Maybe apply an image like moving through water, because when we move through water, we move in a very particular way. We meet the resistance of the water, not by stiffening up, but by releasing tightness and stiffness in muscles and joints, just as we will try to do in Tai Chi. Another example of an image that we present to our body. You like to think of it like that. And in the process of making that presentation, we give time and space for our body to adapt to the new circumstances that we told it about. And then go on the foot forwards. So feet should be hip width apart, and that could be measured from the inside or the outside of your foot or anywhere in between. So there's a little bit of leeway. We don't want our feet close together like this, because it starts to feel as though we're balanced on top of a pole, and we don't want them too wide apart. This can be a useful stance, but it's also one that can be quite tiring for the legs. And also you can feel a bit kind of uncertain forwards and backwards to start off with. So this is our standard stance. It's not the only one that we use, but it is the foundation stance. And in this position, just begin to rock your weight forwards and backwards, pivoting from your ankles. And I get this hole here, you see, just by if you imagine this being in the central line of the body, the pole is moving forwards and backwards. So I'm not bending my hips or dropping my head down, trying to avoid that. And of course, if I go too far, then everything falls over. Or more likely, what I'm going to do is to stiffen up. But also there's the possibility that, you know, if I were to do this, in theory, I could find position for the pole where I could just walk away from it, and that wouldn't happen, it wouldn't fall down. In practice, of course, that's very difficult. But if I were to get, say, some guy ropes like you have on a tent and peg it out, then that would also support this. So if we think of muscles, tendons, the soft tissue of the body, the fascia, and so on, as being like the guy ropes of a tent, then between the center line and the internal structure of the body, most notably perhaps to begin with the skeleton, and our ability to begin to align ourselves with the pull of gravity, with the support of those various soft tissues, we can begin to just find a central place where we begin to settle. And once again, I'm going to come closer to the camera. I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit. This makes it easier to allow our weight to drop, allow our center of gravity to drop. So it means that we can just begin to sit back like this. Our pelvis will tuck under. There'll be a slight curve in the knees, so there's a little ball tucked in behind each knee, and in our hips, those little ball held in front of our hips. This is referred to sometimes as the routine position, the original, final position. And it contains many of the qualities that we're trying to develop and to cultivate through the various movements that we have. So this is a good position to reflect upon, having an awareness of the space within the body, feeling how your body's supported by your legs, how your upper body supported by your back. So moving the necessity to put your belly in tight, to hold your chest tight, and a growing awareness as our thoughts settle and we become more focused. This internal support from the skeleton, which of course supports us from inside, gives us shape from inside. And all of these things will interact with. And then letting the hips drop back a little bit more, the pelvis tucking under a little bit more, until you feel yourself being pushed up. So the push up from your hips into your back into the rest of your upper body. And then reaching the tipping point, gravity begins to pull you down again until your legs respond by pushing you up. So we're moving in accordance with these two principal forces acting on the body, allowing the pull of gravity to draw us downwards until we feel that springiness in our legs pushing us up, and feeling the flow of the movement that results from this dynamic, particularly through the upper part of our body. Expanding and contracting, and again, just allowing that to settle into a steady rhythm. It can be quite difficult to recognize that rhythmic element when we're moving slowly, but it will be there. And then bringing your arms around, and as you push up this time, that movement, pushing your elbows out, drawing your hands up, turning them over as though you have a ball underneath your arms, and you're pressing the ball down, and then turning again, pushing up, raising the ball, and sinking down. This is the exercise rooting down because its principal focus is going to be the sinking of the center of gravity that is the sort of starting point, if you like. Without the sinking down, there can be no pushing up. So we learn to yield to this force acting, the pull of gravity working on us. The force that acts on us all of our lives, and rather than resisting it, finding a way to let it move freely through our body. So this is a good example of that process of cultivation. Gravity is always there, and our response to gravity is always there. Otherwise, we'd either float up towards the ceiling or collapse on the floor. So this is not purely about Tai Chi, but where Tai Chi comes in is we say, okay, we've got these forces, and now we'll just allow them to work freely through our body. We'll try and work towards a structure and a way of moving that doesn't interrupt this process, but actually begins to work for us. I might liken this to something like a sailor setting the sails of the boat so that the wind that might have blown the boat over, stop the boat moving, actually propels the boat. The movement can become very smooth, sometimes described as though it's a massaging quality. It also has probably become aware of areas of your body where there's a bit of tightness or a bit of a blockage. Try not to dwell on those areas too much. Initially, just allowing the movement to ease those areas, this or a subsequent exercise. So is very much part of the practice. I'm just going to drink the water. You might consider using, again, an image in those areas of blockage. I like the image of water flowing over a rock in a riverbed and gradually smoothing it off. As we get more familiar with the movements and our postures, we might also begin to recognize that there are adjustments that we want to begin to develop. Quite often the old habits of movement are very much influencing those areas of blockage. And this time, still the same in legs and hips, but turn your hands out, moving into the exercise, the wild goose. The image of the bird in flight offers some quality of smoothness, grace, strength of movement. Then that too becomes very much integrated into the physical movements via this process of influencing our body through our intentionality, intentional imagery. And then the hands crossed in front of your belly, pushing up again, elbows leading the hands, drawing them around in a nice smooth circle. This is part in the clouds. Once again, just remind yourself that the rhythm, the pace of the movement has its source in your feet and your legs and the ground beneath you, in this dynamic that builds between the pull of gravity and your body's response. Just to remind yourself that you don't create this by moving your arms. Your arms express this movement. And this time, going back to the first of these exercises, rooting down, doing a little sequence of 3 movements. So rooting down, the bottom of the movement here, simply rotate your arms out, going into the wild goose. Fingertips disappearing there. And then at this point, let your hands drop down, going into parting effects. And then we go back to rooting down. If you happen to make the wrong movement, it's not a massive failure, it's not the end of the world. But try just to be clear about the sequence. Again, this helps to really focus your attention. And then just beginning to be aware of the subtle changes between one movement and another. All 3 movements require this movement in our legs and our hips. But as we come into an awareness of the patterns of movement within our upper body, we realize that each movement also has its own unique patterns, its unique qualities. And this furthers this sense of awareness, this deepening awareness, and also furthers the idea that we can begin to bring body and mind together in this, and that we can build some kind of sense of intentionality. There's an intention to do part in the clouds, to expand your belly up into chest or however you experience it. And the intention now is to do rooting down. So as you get to know the movements better, that aspect of the art is something that becomes stronger for us. Now this time changing. And now just focusing on one side of your body, letting that movement push your elbow out, drawing your fingers up. At the top of the movement, wind your arm around, draw down. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Bring your attention to the center of your body, to the opposite side of your body, and do the same thing. So here we start to realize that that process of awareness, and in particular that process of intentionality, can actually be quite discriminating. We can choose where we want the movement to really work. The pull of gravity is a constant through the body. The response of our body is a constant. It's like we're choosing which parts of the body are actively responding, which parts of the body are still part of this, but are less obvious, I suppose. Here, one side of my body is very much supporting, the other side moving. So we begin to appreciate how we're able to guide the movement, to guide the energy through the mind, through this process of becoming more aware and refining our intention. Dragon plucks the stars. It's one more time. And then come back to this first position, what I described as the Wu Chi position. Rest for a moment. Couple of slow, gentle breaths. Just see how this feels to stand after doing a few exercises. And then just shake. It's important to realize that we're always subject to our intention, whether they're deliberate or not, whether they're how can I put it, whether they're conscious or not, but imagery and memory and environmental factors, all sorts of things are constantly affecting us. And we are constantly being encouraged to respond to those intentions. The example I often give to people is advertising. You walk past a billboard and somebody's eating a bar of chocolate that you really like or something like that, and suddenly you're fancy a bar of chocolate. This is an example of where an image has quite unconsciously, probably haven't even consciously registered the billboard, but it's stimulated a physical response. And as we become more familiar with these patterns of internal movements, we realize that we can bring an influence to bear. We can intend that releasing of the tightness by using an image like water flowing over a rock, perhaps, or by thinking maybe if I change where my hip is or adjust the shoulder. So we start to bring body and mind together in a very supportive way. So the next couple of exercises, we don't go up and down in our hip, but do try and maintain this sense of your hips dropping back, feeling perhaps in hips, lower back and buttocks, that they're overhanging slightly, almost like you were sitting on a fence, on top of a fence or a gate. And so this constant sense of a downward movement, this remains in the background for the whole time. And with that, the intention to allow that to work through your body. And then bringing your hands to your sides, to the center part of your body. This is the part of your body that you want to drop towards the ground. And as we see, there's other things involved in this as well. So now, bringing your hands up and in front of your body, just pushing up your hands a little bit in front of your body, and then back down, bringing your hands, bringing your attention back to your center. Up again, push out to the sides, and again, my hands a little bit in front of my body, not all the way, but not pulled back. And then this time, in that center part of the body, I turn. And my hands change direction. I come back, bring my hands back, and then in the other direction, same thing, and back, and then facing forwards and pushing out. So the exercise, pushing in 4 directions, realizing how significant the center part of your body is in shaping those directions. So it's that center part of our body that is dropping towards the ground. The center part of our body that begins to guide our arms, our upper body in general in particular. Maybe even, as you'll see later, it's happening in the legs. It's the center part of our body that we return our attention to. And that feeling of that center part of the body sitting on the ground also begins to represent this quality of stillness, calmness. So we actually have a physical location, physical posture that we can come back to find just a glimpse of that quietness, that quality that in Tai Chi is described as the stillness within the movement. And realizing that there's this constant rhythm. The bodies expand and contract, just as our bodies were sinking towards the ground and then being pushed up. And this is an ongoing rhythm in many ways in our lives. The generic sort of description will be yin yang, yin the contracting, yang the expanding movements. And so there's a pattern of movement there that when we learn to follow it, will help us to come back to this sense of being very centered, being rooted, and all the qualities, physical and mental, that we begin to associate with them. As we extend out, almost inevitably, we lose some of those qualities, but we learn that we can come back to them. Feeling the patterns, particularly in the back and sides of your body with this one, I think. A lengthening of your back, sides. And then a broadening. It's not that other parts of the body don't respond, of course, but we can find principal points of focus for all of these exercises. And sometimes we discover new points of focus and realize that that can actually have a physical effect on the movement. So again, as you become more experienced in these movements, you begin to discover things for yourself. The last time through this set, pushing in 4 directions. Letting your hands drop down, maintaining the stance. And this time again, focusing on one side of your body, letting the expansion. Push your arm out so it swings up until it's in line with your nose. And then just straight down this center line of the body. And we start again. It's called circling palms. Again, try not to lift your shoulder up when your arm swings up. Imagine somebody gently pressing there so that it's a genuine rotation in your shoulder joint. And then adding the turn. So if you find that in turning in the center of your body, you're sort of pulling your hip, your shoulder out of line, then just see if you can either find a little bit more space in that movement, just ease off on the tightness of muscles and joints, or if that doesn't work, then you can just leave out the turn. once again, cultivating that internal space. Change sides. Remember, hips dropping back, center of gravity dropping. So in theory, you don't have to carry any excess weight in the upper part of your body. And then add in the turn. And once again, just coming back to standing and reflecting on the qualities of this simple standing posture. Collectively, we refer to these qualities of central equilibrium with the phrase central equilibrium. The Chinese term is Zhongli. And for those of you with a bit more experience in these arts, I would really recommend looking at that basic posture, giving yourself a chance to really experience the posture, because I think arguably what I've just referred to as Zhongding, as central equilibrium, is the state, if you like, the quality that we want in body and mind all the way through these exercises. There undoubtedly with some of the exercises it's quite tricky. The next couple of exercises are a good example of that. And again, there's a technical side to this, but also what we might think of as a more intuitive side. As you become aware of the possibility of that space within the upper part of your body, for instance, there's a deliberate intention to try and cultivate that space. And so when you lose it, you have something that you can refer back to. And this is how the art of Tai Chi develops for us. So standing in this Wu Chi position, now just again thinking about the center part of the body and just gently tilting your pelvis forwards and backwards and letting that move your head. So one of the key areas of the body to help us become more aligned with the pull of gravity is the center of the body. We're often inclined to pull ourselves upright with our shoulders, but that's a struggle against the pull of gravity. Again, if I get the pole here, especially if I had a weight on the end of the pole and I wanted to lift it up, I'll be more inclined to use a sense of leverage to push the bottom of the pole down. If we think, well, if you look at where my hand is now, if you think of that as the pelvis, then it's going to affect the line of the pole. So once again, realizing the significance of that central part of the body, and we're going to focus your attention to that. Letting your attention rest in the center. And we're going to make use of this facility, the center of the body, to affect our vertical alignment in the next two exercises. If you're new to this particularly, please go carefully. They're quite strong exercises on the back and the knees. Before we go into the exercise, just recognize that what I'm doing, again, I'll come forwards, is not leaning forward. If I simply bend forwards like this, my center of gravity goes forwards, I lose central equilibrium, I get pulled over, or I stiffen up and reduce that space within the body, or whatever happens. If I push my hips back, there's a better chance that my center of gravity stays over my legs. Although it's strong on the back and there's a degree of conditioning involved here, it does mean that I'm more likely to be able to retain that space. And then to come upright, it's as though somebody pushes down on my lower back and I just come up there. And it's gravity that actually doesn't push down, it pulls down. It's gravity that actually brings you to the upright position. Two exercises using that, just sinking down. First, you push up, let your arms come out. Then pushing your hips back a little bit and sweeping over. So you're rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. I'm doing this quite big, so hopefully you can see the mechanism, but don't feel you have to do it this much, particularly this extension. It can take time for your back to condition to get into that position without stiffening up. You might just want, it's fine to do just a smaller movement like this. And sometimes, as some of you know, the smaller movements can actually reveal things that we missed with the bigger movements. So it's not just about making big movements. And the more we can become aware of those small changes in the body, the more we can bring our intentionality to them, the more they will influence the bigger movements. Rowing about, and then hands palm down in front of you, turn, and then push your hips back so your hands go forwards. Swing across, your hips drop down, come back to the center. So polishing the table. I turn around, you can see what my hips are doing, perhaps. Going back, swinging across again. I'm exaggerating this, dropping down, coming back to this. Gentle extensions for your back and spine. Moving into your shoulders and arms. And then to your hands and legs. Allowing gravity to draw your hips down to bring you to the upright position. One more time. And again, stand. Once again, step forward. So turn your left foot out, step forward with your right foot roughly on the diagonal corners of a square. And again, moving your weight, beginning to push against the ground. This is a good starting point. You're going to push your foot into the ground, push yourself forwards, and you settle in the front foot, and you're going to push yourself back. Again, people more used to this, slightly more subtle than that, is the idea that when we go into our back foot, we allow our weight to drop more, and the leg is compressed and then expands and pushes us forward. Same thing as we go into the front foot. So again, we move from an outer perspective of the movement, pushing against the ground, to something that is more internalized. And it's not that one is right and one is wrong. They're different perspectives. But increasingly, I think in Tai Chi, we begin to view the movements from the inside out. We're still concerned with the exterior movement. And then just raising your toes and your heel. Turn the front foot out a little bit. Try not to stiffen up in your hips or your back or your shoulders when you do start to move the foot like this. But rather, think of your hips sinking down, and it's just a simple flexion and extension of your ankle. That allows more of your weight to settle into each leg until eventually we can just step in and then push out. So trying to maintain that quality of posture, that quality of central equilibrium, now while you're moving, this is quite challenging. One of the key things that we learn to do is to allow gravity, freedom of movement through our body, and particularly through our hips, as we just discovered our hips, and they're drawn back, help to keep our body upright. And then on the other side. So we learn to not resist forces acting on the body, not to just let them push us around, but to find a way of moving with them. Again, the image of moving through water can be very helpful. And in particular, if you imagine being in the sea with the waves and the currents, we tend to move with the waves. You need to raise your toes and your heel. So this is an exercise that can help you to maintain central equilibrium, perhaps maintain your root of stability whilst you're moving. So it's a very useful exercise to practice. Stepping in, planting the foot forwards, backwards, trying not to just fall into the step, but by planting, I put the heel down, I lower the toes, I press in gently, and then I move to the right. Same thing going back, except it's the ball of the foot that goes down first. And then take a few steps through, either forwards or backwards. And going back. So, have your right foot forward, starting off as I often do in this part of the past with a movement called pushing and cast the neck. You wait till your back leg, you push yourself forwards and then let your arms swing. And then the same idea going back. So your hands follow the movement of your shoulders. Your shoulders are following the movement of your hips. The hips are following the movement of your weight from one foot to another. Rooted in the feet, transmitted to our legs. Guided by the center of the body because we're facing forwards at this point. And then expressed through upper body and arm. So again, maybe just aware of those subtle changes of movement within your body as your arms swing from your shoulders. Now this time, go into your back foot, turn your left hand palm down, turn your body to the left a little bit, and as you go forwards, turning towards the front, drawing your arm around a nice smooth circle and then back. And as you turn to the left again, as you go towards the back foot, draw your right hand. It's almost like an upright version of polishing the table. The hands are alternating and you're not pushing your hips back because you now have the movement of the weight. This is called polishing. Sorry, it's not called polishing the table. This is called stirring the beans. So again, rooted in our feet, transmitted to our legs, guided by the center of the body. Once again, very strong sense of being very centered in mind and body. Arms just gently extend out, but not locked out. So my elbows still very much bent. And if you can remember from polishing the table, that sense of the extension that started through your spine, led into your arms. There's a similar thing going on here, although your back and spine remain up. Again, feeling patterns of movement or expansion and contraction working through your body. The flow of the energy, the the patterns of the energy take, much like water that flows through our landscape. Yeah. Shake it. Stepping forwards, the left foot, fisherman casting it. Recognize that there was always an impetus to return our attention to the arms and the hands, and particularly when we get to stirring the beans, it's often we think, oh, what's going on? And our response is to bring our attention back to our center, back to our legs, feet, and the ground, and the movement of our weight, rather than to get flustered. So it's inevitable that happens, but it's an important lesson perhaps that when we are kind of a bit uptight about something, which happens so easily, of course, we have a response that can just help us to quiet and to get some of that space back. And that can help just make our actions that much more efficient. So going into your back foot, turning in the direction of the back foot, going forwards, turning in the direction of the front foot, extending your arm, coming back, letting the arm contract, and then feeling the extension on the other side of your body. Not just in your arm, here maybe a feeling of expansion in the right side of your body, here, expansion in the left side. So again, rather than sort of thinking, oh, I'm going to do this with the arms, feeling your weight move, feeling the turn in your center, feeling those patterns of expansion and contraction, moving your arms forward, and just expressing that movement through your arms and your hands, being clear about the degree of extension in your arms and your hands, where your fingers are, not letting the fingers tighten up. Stirring the beans. Now this time, as you come into the front foot and turn, that separate your arms and swing them out a little bit like the wild goose. Go into your back foot, turn, and again, a little bit like the wild goose. Turn the front foot out, or if you're going to go backwards, the back foot is already turned out. And as you turn this time, just use that movement to help you bring the front foot in, step through, plant the foot. This is called dragonfly skims the water. And the hips dropping back. And then, if you can, do so without wobbling around or putting yourself at risk, just letting your hand come up and raising your foot, a rotation in your hip. If you do feel a bit wobbly, then feel free to keep the foot down. But just see what happens if you can bring a little bit more attention, a little bit more intentionality to that area of your hips and buttocks, that feeling of them overhanging. I'm going to change direction. So you will get little wobbles. So, oh, what's going on here? I might put the foot down, or I might think, oh, can I just settle down a little bit more? Obviously, that takes a little bit of time and practice. It's a very useful quality to be able to develop. Once again, bringing your attention back to the center of your body. And then bringing the feet. So don't think of it as a big mistake if you do wobble around a little. It's an opportunity to find out how you can make that kind of recovery. This is a life skill, I feel, that is very useful. Now, rubbing your hands together and the palms of your fingers just tapping over your face. Aware of the sensation, not an uncomfortable one, over your head and neck. down to one shoulder, feeling the vibration of the muscles as you tap down your arm and up again. And onto the other side. And lightly on the back. Again, feeling the vibration in the muscles of your back. Around your hips. And then have your legs up the inside. The light on your back. Then the upper part of your chest. One image that I really like for this quality of central equilibrium that I referred to earlier is of the mountain. I always have this image of a mountain standing upright, plenty of space around it. Quality of stillness, but also very dynamic quality and the strength there. So it encapsulates much of central equilibrium. This last exercise is called Embrace Tiger Return to the Mountain, because it really is about how we come back to that sense of being rooted, of being centered, being in central equilibrium mentally and physically. So sinking down, pushing up, aware of the pull of gravity working through your hips and back and shoulders, just allowing that, bringing your arms around so you're holding the ball here, and then your elbows drawing in. And finally, we return back down, just allowing yourself to be drawn down, settling in, and then starting the whole cycle. And you might want to just reflect on what are the qualities, what are the images, the sensations in your body that are actually highlighted for you as you do this exercise. Because they might be useful to you later when you get a bit frustrated about something, or you feel as though you're in a bit of a rush. And you could do with just recapturing some of that central equilibrium, some of that stillness, spaciousness, calmness, just for a moment. What might be best to remind you of that? What would be the thing that you would want to carry with you? One more time. And once again, standing in the central equilibrium. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. Please feel free to contact me if you do have any questions, but enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.